Welcome, guys and girls, to our series on entrepreneurship. So, we're looking at successful entrepreneurs are bold risk takers, and you kind of have to be, right? Because there's only you, and particularly if you are an entrepreneur or you're thinking of running with an idea, is that you really have to get out of your comfort zone. There's a lot of people who will never get out of their comfort zone. Successful entrepreneurs regularly get out of their comfort zone and take risks. They take risks on themselves. They trust and believe in themselves. They value their ideas. And, I've created in terms of my own businesses, and I'm very creative, right? And I do try, and what I've learned is to experiment a lot. But there's always that. I mean, in terms of being an entrepreneur or being in your own business or anything you want to try, even if you've got a hobby, right, you want to try and monetize it, is that at the base of that, there's always going to be a little bit of fear in the pit of your belly, right? Is it going to work? Or there can be a little bit of self-doubt. And I don't care who you are or how big you are or how big your business is, there's always going to be that little level of niggling, fear or doubt underneath it. But you've actually just got to push through that, and you've got to put it aside, and you've literally got to go for it. So as much as entrepreneurs are bold risk takers, right, they experiment. They try new ways of doing things, and they very much foster trust and belief in their ideas. And they push through that fear barrier, whereas that might constantly hold other people back. And you might be somebody that really wants to run with an idea, or you want to try something, but you've still got to overcome those barriers that are in here, right? And sitting in here. And to become a bold risk taker, what can I share with you about that? The more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. And people around you can freak out because they don't like getting out of their comfort zones, right? But you're going to learn how to get really comfortable in that space. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to learn to become a bold risk taker. Now, that doesn't mean making stupid risks that are going to, and what do I mean by stupid? Well, doing things where you're going to invest a whole lot of money and you really haven't done your homework or your research around your customer base, and do you have a product that people want to buy? It's not about, throwing your money away. You want to be really wise with your money and where you spend it. So you've got to watch that. I think we have to take calculated risks. And it's also about not throwing a job away that pays for your bills, right, to run off in fantasy land and chase an idea. Sometimes that works, right, but you still got to pay your bills. So you've got to kind of work out when you want to get into this kind of thing is, how am I going to support myself in the meantime? I've got to say, part-time job's always a great idea. You might want to do some moonlighting. So work on your ideas after hours, on the weekends. Start, growing things first. Like, I always grow a customer base first. I always grow an audience first before I launch an idea. So you kind of have, whenever we're a bold risk taker, we've got to make calculated risks. So you've got to be smart about it as well. And, it's about really, the more that you get out of your comfort zone, and I will say this to you a lot, the more comfortable you're going to be in that space. One, in terms of facing your fears, in terms of going after what you want, about creating things and putting things out there that have value, and you're hoping that other people are going to find that value in it. I think it's always important that when you run with an idea, you take a risk, is that, one, there's never a safety net, right? Nobody's going to catch you. Nobody's going to catch you. There's no little spider web underneath you that's going to go, the minute you step off that cliff and go after what it is that you want, that someone's going to catch you. You've just got to keep taking that next step, right? And making progress and having achievable goals. And, we can have an idea, right, but you've still got, and I will go into this in more detail in another video, is you've got to be able to have a profitable business model. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs that fail because they're going to run with a passion project, which they love doing, right? But there's no demand for it. So you're already dead in the water, my loves. You are. So, you might have a book or an idea that you want to write, and it's like this big. And then you're going to try and sell that without figuring out first, after you've written this thing that's this big, or you've created an XYZ product, right? And you've put a whole lot of money into it, whether there was any demand for it in the first place. So you got to be really wise, right? So when you look at these things, well, I research things a lot, and I might watch a trend for sometimes 12 months. I've watched a trend, right? Before I've jumped into it. So it's about, whenever you run with an idea, is okay, first of all, are you doing it because you love it, which is a great reason, right? But are you doing it because you love it, but not many people are going to see the value in it? Because that's where you're going to not have a successful business, right? Because there'll be no demand for it, or there'll be low demand for it. You want to create something or you might be able to pivot what you're doing and create it into a product or a service that either has a niche market for it, which you're really going to capitalize on a niche market, or people really want it, they need it, it's an essential. You kind of want to watch the things where it's a nice to have, but I'm probably not going to get my money out of my pocket or my purse or my wallet to pay for it. Yeah. So you've got to really think about that. And you might have something where, when you're a bold risk taker, you might need to refine it until it becomes saleable. And once you have a product that you think, well, I'm going to take this to market and I'm going to experiment with it, and where am I going to, see if there's some demand for it, because we can always test the waters, yeah, is how do I then create a scalable business model around it? Because you can create something, and you've got to kind of think in two mindsets. So if I'm going to do something that I really love doing, which might fill my days with absolute joy, yeah, but there's going to be a time where you've only got so many hours in the day if you're not planning on creating a team and you just want to do it yourself. You've got to be mindful that you're going to be paid an hourly rate for whatever you're doing. And you've got to factor that into your product or service, and you're going to be limited to the amount of hours you can work, right? Because you're going to hit a plateau at some point, a point where you cannot do any more hours, and that's as much as you're going to earn with that product or that service. The other way of looking at it is that you could start off that way, and then you might find other ways that you can create other income flows around it, right? Where you're not using your own labor all the time, that you're creating things that are automated, or they're easy, or you could outsource them. There's all these kind of things. So you kind of got to think about, how can I create a scalable business model? So if I want to take this, how can I do it without me doing all the physical stuff all the time? I mean, when we have an idea, and I know I'm digressing a little bit, yeah, don't ever think, and don't get sucked into quick rich schemes, yeah? Don't get sucked into them, because I can tell you right now, being an entrepreneur and being a successful one is you're going to have to put the hours in. And you're going to work more hours than you would from a 9-to-5 job. So if you want a cruisy 9-to-5 job and you don't want to get out of your comfort zone, you're probably better off to have your 9-to-5 job than being an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs work harder than anyone else. Usually they do. And to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to put a lot of hard work in the first year or 2 years or 3 years, yeah, before you start seeing a lot of results. And you kind of got to be mindful of that as well. So if you think you're going to just jump in and you want to get out of what you're doing because you're not satisfied with it, you've really got to think about, well, if I want to create something, do I have a passion for it? Is it something that's going to light me up with joy? Am I still going to be slogging at it and joyfully slogging at it when I know I've got to put in more hours than anybody else has got to put in to make it work? Yeah, because you kind of got to be a lot of things too, yeah? I mean, you got to look after your finances, you got to market it, you got to create that product or service. So you got to have some expertise in some sort of area, yeah, or creative talents, or do you need to partner with people to fill those gaps up? There's all these things to consider. But when we get back to it, right, so this is where becoming a bold risk taker is, when you keep all those kind of things in mind, you've still got to move forward. So you've still got to take a risk, and you've still got to trust in your ideas and have self-belief to put them out there. And you're going to get, there's always going to be people that will naysay, or they won't understand what you're doing, particularly if you're a visionary And I suppose that's something I've always been, right? And I can often be 2 or 3 years ahead of where people are. And they'll go, I don't know what you're doing. I don't understand it. And I'm going, you don't need to understand it. I need to understand it because in my head, I've already seen the vision way out there. And I've already figured out all the steps coming backwards, right? And I'm working on these steps, but I'm going to be out there. Yeah, that's where my goal point is, over there. And you can try and, you can try and explain it to people, but really, if you're an entrepreneur and you're a passionate one and you're taking those bold risks, there's always going to be people around you that aren't going to get it. They don't need to get it. You need to get it, yeah? Or your team needs to get it. You and your team needs to get it if you're going to build a team. So I hope you found this helpful. I'd love to know when you took a risk on an idea, you got out of your comfort zone and the results surprised you. Did better than you thought it would, or maybe it was a bit of a flop. Why was it a flop? Love to hear comments down below. Let's chat in the comments down below. Don't forget, follow me on Instagram. I'll put my handle on here. Follow me on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, but you can find all that down below. Yeah. And stay in touch. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so my videos come through to you in your feed. Chat soon.